So in this chapter, we're going to look at shapes. And shapes in Painter are basically just what we think of as vector artwork in applications like Corel Draw and Adobe Illustrator. Vector artwork is incredibly powerful. You see it all the time. It's in logos, it's in signs, it's basically all text. And a lot of things like Flash animations are made with vector artwork as well. So vectors are really powerful. However, they're not necessarily easy to understand. There's a little bit of a learning curve with vectors. So I'm going to try to simplify things and make it as easy as possible to understand. But to begin with here, I'm going to go ahead and go to the gouache category with my brush, and I'm going to choose the flat weight stroke. I'm going to set the size to 3, and then I'm going to grab the straight line strokes. And I'm just going to go ahead and click, and click, and click, and click, and click. And you can remember that basically the way this works is that we are creating a polygon shape. If I keep clicking, it's just connecting the clicks like connecting the dots. And if I hit enter, it'll close that polygon shape out. So vector artwork works a lot the same way. If we come down here to the pen tool on the toolbar, and we click, and then click, and then click, and then click, 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 and right here there's a command for close shape. So I'm just going to click that. So it basically does the exact same thing. We have our shape here that was made with our brush tool using the flat weight stroke brush. And that looks one way. And then we have this vector shape that we created using the pen tool in pretty much the exact same way. Now, interesting thing to know about working with shapes is that shapes will always create their own layer. Each shape will get its own special shape layer. And you can tell it's a shape layer by the little icon over here in the corner. Now, one of the interesting things about working with shapes is if we zoom in, you'll see that the raster artwork that we created with our flat weight stroke brush has this very jagged, kind of pixelated, blurry looking edge. And the more we zoom in, the more obvious that is, that this is made with pixels. And that's called raster artwork. And if we use the keyboard shortcut of the spacebar to scroll down, you can see here that the vector artwork is completely crisp. And if we continue to zoom in, I'm at 1200%, and you can still see that that is absolutely completely crisp. There is no edge there that gets grainy or pixelated. Whereas up here, it becomes completely pixelated and really kind of hard to look at. So the bottom line here is the strength of working in vector versus working in raster is that raster is made with pixels, whereas vector is made of math. Now, that may sound scary to people, especially people who aren't into math, who don't dig math, and I'm not necessarily crazy about math myself, because as an artist, my primary concern is making art, not doing calculations. Don't worry about it. The calculations are done by the computer, which is what computers are good at. And this is the reason why vector art was one of the original forms of CG. Now, what makes vector art go? Well, the thing that makes vector art go is the points. And you can see these little points. And if I grab the shape selection tool, I can actually select these points and move them. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one here. And you can tell it's selected by the fact that it's red. If I click on this one, it's red. And now I can move this. Well, you can't do that with your raster artwork either. Once you put it down, it's basically down. But here, with our vector artwork, we can continue to modify this in whichever way we want to create a brand new shape that is completely different from what we initially drew. So that's one major difference of the vector artwork that makes it interesting and superior in its own way. But then on top of that, we have other tools that are available to us. And I'll just go ahead and delete this shape real quick. Come back to the pen tool. Now, if we click and click, we're creating a straight line segment, just like we've seen before. However, if we click and then hold down on the Wacom pen and drag, you can see that we're creating these handlebars. And the direction that we drag is going to determine how the handlebar affects the line that's made between these two dots. And that line is becoming what's known as a Bezier curve. So if I click and drag this way, I'm going to get a different effect. So let me go ahead and just click and drag up like so. And then I'm just going to click without dragging. And we're going to look at this Bezier curve. So I'm going to come back over here to my shape selection tool, and I'm going to click on that point. So this point is the pivot point of this transformation that's occurring. And these handlebars are really controlling the curve that you're seeing here. So this curve is basically a straight line here and a straight line here going into this point with these two handles affecting the intermediate line between these 3 points. So what do I mean when I'm saying that it's affecting it? Well, this little blue dot at the end here, I like to think of this as a magnet. And basically what this magnet is doing is it's pulling this part of the line along with it. This magnet is pulling this part of the line along with it. So if I click on this handle and I pull up, you can see it pulls that segment of line with it. If I click here and I pull up, you can see that it's basically allowing that line to straighten out. If I pull all the way back to that red dot, you can see effectively I get a straight line. So the idea basically really comes down to this. These Bezier curves, as they're called, and they're basically a fairly old form of math, it's been around for about 50 years or so, is going to enable us to create complicated shapes that are easily editable at any time that we want to, in ways that we could never do with our polygon straight line brush tools or trying to freehand stroke it. This is much, much more powerful, and actually this comes back to be really useful when we're painting. So we're going to look more and more at these vector shapes and how to work with these vector shapes and how to get the most out of them in the coming chapter.